David Howell, and I've got Dr. Bratton, Aaron Bratton. How are you doing today?
I'm very tired.
Very tired.
It's been a long week, man. But it's been a good week. As I've tell patients regularly, they're like, "You're a busy man." I was like, "Well, in my line of work, you're either busy or you're broke."
That's right.
So
That's right. Well, basically, we've known each other for all of what, 2 weeks, 3
2 to
weeks?
3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. We met face to face for the first time a week or
A
so
week ago,
ago.
had
Yeah,
lunch.
yeah.
Was it Josie's? Is
Jose's
Jose's? Okay,
Atkins International Cafe.
that's right. It was brilliant, brilliant. So, basically, how did we get here in 2 weeks? So, I came across Aaron one day because a mutual friend that we have
Mhm,
knew that he was passionate about fluoride,
mhm.
and I'm currently running for office, and so part of that's having different conversations day to day. But when I found that out, because my wife's passion for fluoride in the water, I was like, all right, maybe I need to reach out to this guy and hear a little bit more. And so that's kind of how we ended up at lunch. And so
Right,
I had some questions for you in that, and as we talked, we didn't have enough time because you had to get back to your patients,
right.
and so we decided to keep this conversation going because I love it. So,
Well, as far as, I was, Dr. Aaron Bratton, I am a dentist. I'm not a chiropractor. I'm not an osteopath. I'm not a homeopath. This is my wheelhouse, my field of expertise. And I didn't obviously always be in this position. I went through our Arkansas Tech science degree, bachelor biology, minor in chem, went to Oklahoma University for dental school, and it was taught the history of fluoride, the applications thereof, even the biochemical mechanisms that the mouth uses for it, and was shown its applications and helpfulness that has been touted to us for as long as all of us have been alive. Um, but over time, I began to be exposed to other lines of thought, and not just lines of thought, but inquiry followed up with scientific method application of, hey, what else is going on? Um, and obviously I'm very, cookie cutter, straight edge, run of the mill dentist with my beard,
I can
mustache.
tell with the beard. Yeah, I don't think anything's running the
that
mill about
that
the
I've
beard.
gotten a bun down here. Um, so I've never been one to just follow along for the sake of following along. Once I've caught with that something not necessarily hidden, but because we are creatures of habit and establishment and norms, we get to a point of acceptance, and without any kind of immediate or acute fallout, there's oftentimes an assumption that things are okay.
Mhm.
Especially with the complicated nature that the human body has, we're finding out even just modern day the issues of microplastics, and previous eras, mercury was a common thing that was used in, the term "mad as a hatter" was because they used mercury to felt their hats, and people knew hatters got mad, but they didn't know why, and it's mercury poison.
Really?
Oh yeah, no, that's where Mad Hatter came from.
I never knew that.
Mercury was a very common industrial agent. And then obviously we know about lead in the aqueducts in
Mhm.
ancient Rome. And so while we're extremely industrious, curious, capable species, we find an immediate application that seems to break a trend and treat a problem. We're not as capable of then continuing assessment of what other auxiliary perks or detriments does this application or introduction into our complicated human system occur. Um, and we're in medicine especially, we're horrible about compartmentalization. So when we compartmentalize the effects of fluoride to your mouth and don't look at anything else, and no one else is really keyed into it because you don't have any
Well,
other,
we've always done it.
well, and you don't have doctors prescribing fluoride because it's not their wheelhouse. They don't care about the mouth.
Yeah.
So I started having these people, call them hippies, call them granola crunchy folks, always kind of going that, and I'm like, yeah, like you're up there with the 5G's bad and different conversation, but you start putting them off until I had somebody I sat down with that was highly self-educated and in no way a tinfoil hat type person, but he's like, I heard fluoride was a neurotoxin, and I went, "What are you talking? No, it's not." He's like, "No, fluoride is a pesticide. It's used in rat poison and so on and so forth." And I went, "No, it's not." And then I took out my supercomputer that sits in my pocket and went, "Oh my god!" And but then we're told dose is correct and this and these
Mhm.
other things. But it planted that seed years ago
Mm.
for me to start going, all right, when someone says something about this, I'm gonna go through and look at it, and I'm gonna follow through, and I'm gonna see what's being done.
Mhm.
And so over time, I continued to be in fluoride's medicine, and then in the dental in my field in my office, if a patient says they don't want it, they don't want it, fine. But if they want it, you're applying it in a controlled setting, you're applying it where it needs to be, and it's not spreading throughout the rest of the system. So, but that's how it's supposed to be. Well,
Mhm.
we as a nation were the really the first developed nation to kind of put two and two together of fluoride and human body and natural occurring water sources.
Mhm.
So back in it was discovered in the early 1800s as a compound. I want to say it was somewhere in Germany. They Swiss German, something like that. They identified it, this is a fluorine compound, so on and so forth. And that was the era of just discovery of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But they didn't really find a whole lot of uses for it. They found a use for it in terms of smelting, creation of aluminum, byproducts, things of that nature. And it wasn't until like 1840s no, I'm sorry, 1930s that it was then directly attributable to an effect that was then put together and confirmed in the 1930s by a follow-up study. But there was this it was in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and they were noticing the populations were that had been there for a generation or two
Mhm.
were developing and showing teeth that had this specific brown and white modeling staining in the teeth.
Mhm.
Not they grew in that way. And it was so profound and pervasive that it became known in the dental communities as Colorado brown stain. And so one of the other things they noticed that were these teeth specifically in this population was having lower rates of dental decay.
Mm.
And this was back in the day. You go through and look at any World War One photos of soldiers and GIs, hardly any of them had a full smile.
Yeah.
Like, dental decay was a horrendous problem in developed nations because
Dentists going through becoming doctors of dentistry. When did that start?
so, if you wanna go all the way back, we were the original barbers. Dentists why we wear short white coats because his long coats was in, the College of Surgeons in France. They said, "Alright, you had the barbers, which were the bloodletters and the tooth pullers and stuff, and then the surgeons."
Okay.
So, that was black.
Okay.
And he was the one who started the first kind of official standardized dental schooling curricula and
Mhm.
started the first schools. And he was actually part of the team, and the dentist McKay was one of his students, but they were the ones that went to Colorado Springs that then created or found the correlation of the fluoride compound in the water supply being responsible for
Gotcha.
the fluorosis. So dentists as an established institution began in the US in the mid 1800s.
Mhm.
Um, and from there, we were the ones that discovered local anesthetics. We were the ones that discovered the utilization of nitrous oxide as a pseudo general anesthesia. Um, and believe it or not, we're also the ones that invented the electric chair. But
Come on accident or,
well, so, you think about our whole work in terms of before we had anesthetics, what did we do? We tortured people
Yeah.
in one of the worst ways possible, and how are you gonna do your work if they're flailing and fighting while you strap them to a chair? Well, a dentist looked at his chair and went, "Hmm." What if we ran electricity through the guy sitting in the chair? So we're an interesting bunch.
Hopefully, it started with a criminal and didn't start
Oh
with
yeah,
just a patient.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
That's kinda sick.
because of our job being necessarily a medically ordained torture modality, we've always been on the lookout and at the forefront of prevention metrics
Mhm.
and trying to do pain relief metrics. The first local anesthetic, once again, dentist. The first local anesthetic block was a dental block.
Mm.
The application and use of nitrous in a surgery was noted by a dentist. Nitrous used to be a party drug back in the United States. There'd be a wagon that would run around town, town to town, and they'd have nitrous parties. And this dentist, and this was like Boston in the 1700s,
Wow.
saw a guy high off his rocker on nitrous fall off a table and hit his knee on the edge of a table and busted open, bleeding everywhere. And the dentist noticed the guy was looking at his knee and just laughing. And he went, he should be screaming. Who else does he know that screams a lot? His patients.
So that's how it
So
started.
that's how that was the seed for nitrous. So dentists have always been on the lookout for something that can prevent people sitting in their chair because of the limitations of medicine and the time
Mhm.
and what would be incurred with it. So they saw this extreme reduction in dental decay in this population
Mhm.
and then said, we're going to find out why that is, what's causing this stain. They knew the stain was related to it, and then said it had to be the fluoride in the water source. So fast forward to 1930s. Um, I've it was a pharmaceutical company, and I have it in one of my links in here, but I forgot to put it in my general notes. But it was a pharmaceutical company said, "We're gonna find out exactly that if it is the fluoride, so then therefore they could start applying it into
Yeah.
a marketable product." And they confirmed it was a 14.7 parts per million fluoride in the local water, which to give you an idea comparative to today, we're maximum 1.5 parts per million in terms of the safe.
Okay.
So it was also noted back then, the fluorosis is what we now call that stain. And that is attributed as now a detrimental aspect because while you don't have decay, well, your teeth look like they're decayed because of this stain. And so the efforts that have been done by the institutions of both general health, water control, and the dental communities have been, we need to find this level that allows for us to reap a benefit of reduction in decay,
Mhm.
but also not incur the developmental impacts that we see and have seen with these naturally occurring high levels. Which and to reiterate, the Colorado Springs, it was natural fluoride that was in the water causing this.
Mhm.
So this all of this began from a position of good intention and earnest in we have to reduce the impact of what our job does when people have to have our work.
Mhm.
Before modern dentistry or anesthetics and antibiotics, the third leading cause of death in the developing world was oral abscess. So because abscess goes septic, it's so close to your brain and
Mhm.
spaces near the brain, it could kill you.
Mhm.
Very often, it could kill you. And if it didn't kill you prior to anesthetics, shock could kill you, or the follow-up infection would
Mhm.
kill you. So, this was a huge thing for
Mm.
the time.
Yeah.
Um, Quickly after the confirmation of the fluoride and the fluoride in the water, the first large-scale test in a community was done locally in or not well, just hopping a skip over in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1945.
Okay.
Um and they put it directly into the water supply, and I think they did about a 3 to 4 overall study, but once again, only looking at rates of decay, and they did have a statistically significant reduction in decay overall.
Okay.
And, within 2 to 5 years of that study, it then was being implemented in a national scale because of that.
Was it a federal type regulation that that's what would happen, or is this just something everybody made the decision of, "Hey, we wanna
It
offer
was
that?"
initially it federal, not necessarily a federal mandate, but, just like our FDA and things do today, they have that sway of, "This is giving our nod of approval, therefore
Mhm,
you should," and then because we have this academic institutional hierarchy of that said, "Okay, I'm now given writ all to go ahead and do." And at the time, with it only being looked at in that capacity, it was a no-brainer for everyone to say, "Well, shoot, this is a problem everywhere.
mhm,
Let's implement." And this is a time frame where which today, the only time you hear about palm olive and things like that is from hand soap, but back then, these brands were the totality of home use brands. So you
mhm,
would have companies, palm olive toothpaste, and Colgate was coming around. Crest didn't exist yet.
mhm.
And Procter Gamble, all of these companies were getting the gears rolling in terms of how can we get products to the population instead of people doing. I mean, it wasn't until the 70s that the majority of the United States then began to have running water, plumbing, and even electricity.
Yeah.
So you would have these pockets of, I mean, especially here in Arkansas, places like Cabot still had dirt road, dirt floor establishments in the 50s.
Mhm.
So the push from the government structures was we have to get our communities in out of this deficit of oral health somehow because there wasn't a product or market capacity to get it to them in a way that was meaningful.
'Kay. Now you mentioned this a minute ago. I just wanted to back up to it real quick because you said it was a natural fluoride when you're talking about Colorado.
Correct.
So, what's the so obviously we've got more than one kind of fluoride
Yeah.
type. So, what's that? And do we find natural fluoride still today in our water source, or is that an additive? I mean, how's it getting in there?
So regionally, a lot of our water sources are sourced from natural
Mhm.
spaces, unless a lot of places in Arkansas and abroad where we've created water sources through dams and diversions of waters, but still most of them have a natural origin at some point. Depending on where that origin point will be, there will be different levels of organic natural fluorides present.
Okay.
Now, those fluorides will typically be in a calcium fluoride compound or something very similar. The most common natural fluoride will be the calcium fluoride with really very few others present in any noticeable um effect. The majority of fluorides that are found in our waters, though, are additives of a synthetic variety or an industrial excess that has then been given the pass to work as the additive for water fluoridation. Um,
So is there a company that owns it all and is selling this to all the water supplies? I mean, that's
there's not a single one company. There in the United States, there's about 5 different companies,
mhm,
um, and they actually provide the majority of the fluorides for the United States. There is some small amount of imported fluoride, and the majority of that comes from Morocco. We will have, uh the next majority percentage comes from Mexico, and a smaller percentage will come from China and a couple of other small places in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Vietnam. However, the majority of the fluorides that they import are not water fluoridated quality. They will go into the smelting and industrial metal alloy type creations,
'kay,
or the Teflon, which is actually a PFAS. It's the per. We'll just call it PFAS for short. But everyone here has heard about the forever molecules that are going around, the forever chemical.
mhm.
That is the PFAS, perfluoroalkyl silicate, and those are the ones that have. They are not added to water. They are purely used in industrial capacity, but due to the fact that they are once they are present, they are more or less inert,
Mhm.
they don't break down, and hence the forever chemical that they're now saying is a now being the last 5 to 10 years is a problem because they're finding it in buildup across all living space from plants, animals, human.
I keep having this thought, because you mentioned it earlier. Because so we're talking about 1930s, 1940s, World War II. I remember in college, one of our professors was talking about lung cancer, and they had all these cases of lung cancer begin to pop up, and this you're dating back 1960s, 1970s, and they couldn't figure out what the significance or the connection. And what it was everybody in common. They were all soldiers in World War One, and in their rations they were being dropped in. It was cigarettes,
Mhm.
and they were providing them. So in the 19 whenever this was 60s 70s, they hadn't seen this lung cancer at this deal, and they had to step back and be like, oh wait, maybe we shouldn't have been dropping in cartons and cartons of cigarettes to our soldiers fighting in other countries in the 19 teens. And so when you were talking about this earlier, and I'm thinking back, I'm like, have we ever stepped back and said, oh wait, maybe we shouldn't have been doing this at that level, because they didn't know that at the time. And so
Well, part of that, that was brilliant marketing on their aspect, and cohort with that, Coca-Cola did the same thing
yeah.
during the entirety of World War One of like, we're gonna donate this. Now, I mean, as far as, cigarettes and tobacco use, that's something that's gone back through even the indigenous cultures of
Yeah.
the United States or the Americas, and the whether they understood nicotine being what it was as an addictive property, it was still known well enough that this is something that made you feel good. This is something that you would be drawn back to. Alcoholism, consumption, that was all of it that was understood.
Yeah.
The the donation model of, we now have this in an industrialized marketable commodity. We're gonna do a favor to our boys, and when they come home, we now have a huge
Market. I
how
mean, has there been studies? Have Did the studies continue?
so pretty quickly people started looking at studies of go because America was the first country to do it in a pseudo mandated manner. Europe adopted it fairly quickly, but a lot of them said, no, we're not going to start putting that in our water, because medicine as a institution formed in Europe and came over the United States, and then we've gone back and forth to each other, sharing what we shouldn't do, patient rights, patient advocacy, the rights that a caregiver should and should not have over a sound mind and body, um, to the point of Europeans take it very seriously, the rights of the individual, or at least they did, as long as it's not speech and like today. But
Don't pray in public.
yeah, don't pray in public. Don't say anything bad on X or Facebook. But the the list of nations in Europe that started it and then have discontinued it, and some of them as early as the 70s, they stopped it.
Oh wow.
But the majority of them didn't do it because of a health risk or even a signal that there was a problem health wise. The majority of them stepped up because their institutional members, dentists and what have you, and their ethics board said, now, if this is in fact a medical intervention or modality, the people, individuals on up, groups, individuals, what have you, communities, have the right to say yes or no. So therefore, their mandated aspects of this were rolled back over time.
Mm.
Um, and just give you a quick rundown of those countries. And none of these are, what we would call backwater nations. They're all EU member states. Some of them are more recent than others. But you got Germany, Sweden, Netherlands, Finland, Czech Republics. Of course, that one's a later one. That was post Soviet fall, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then I think Israel's NATO, but obviously not the EU, but Israel. Israel's actually one of the most recent ones to remove it from their supply, and their core tenet was medical ethics. We do not have the right as a government to mandate a intervention for the cause of health, even if it is a communal health metric.
Never thought about that approach.
Well, we don't, even though we're the so-called land of the liberty and individual, rights and privileges and capacity, we still fall into this Aristotelian totalitarian of what the shepherd says is good for the herd should accept because of the acceptance of the shepherd's all-knowing capacity. And as a pastor, you understand that analogy very well. However,
Yeah.
our shepherd is very much all-knowing and therefore is given that right and privilege. Um, but as we have more honest individuals within these institutions taking a position of humility rather than the hubris of my knowledge set, we know our knowns, and so many forget we don't know our unknowns, that they've had the capacity to step back and say, because of our unknown unknowns, or even right now, the known unknowns of we know fluoride has systemic effects, but we don't know what they are. The truest adherence of risk prevention is to not invite an unknown level of risk. So, you know, to give you an example, you've got a stove sitting in front of you. The dials are all on or all off but one, but none of them are labeled. What's your best way of reducing your risk of a burn? You don't touch any of the burners.
Mhm.
That's how your truest risk reduction is not flip a coin, roll the dice. It's to say there's a real risk here somewhere. That's not.
Yeah.
And so that's what most of Finland, Israel, and Japan, and Hungary, Romania. So 5. 5 of that entire list that had fluoridated and then pulled it back cited potential health concerns, but the main concern was medical ethics adherence.
See, I've never thought about that approach. I mean, and I've told you this before, but in the beginning, my wife was the one kind of going down this rabbit hole, looking at it, talking to me about it. And I've learned in 25 years of marriage that, when the wife starts talking about something, okay, I'll listen to it. And there's a lot of truth there. And but she does. Just her personality type. She'll go down these rabbit trails and follow it and chase it. And I'm just in the back of my mind, sounds great, honey,
Yeah,
let's go. But I've never thought until you said that a minute ago about the medical ethics
yeah.
side of this.
Well, it's frog in boiling or warming water. It would just because we've been conditioned and it's a norm. You don't have a stable society by questioning established norms. Because if you did and you're always doing that, you won't have stable society. You'll always been in a state of turbulence. And there's obviously positives about that because we have established norms that have formed this nation that started with the Magna Carta in the UK of you have rights as citizens, so on and so forth. That's an unquestioned established norm. And when you have that level of norm, it then just becomes accepted and you don't ever think to question something. But we're getting to this day and age where we've decompartmentalized the human body and we've begun to recognize that, hey, we actually are all connected and none of it's really separate entity. And in the dental world, there's a very poignant example that is an established fact for the last 15, 20 years that your health of your mouth is an indicator of the health of the rest of your body
Mm,
to the point of if you have, we call it, depending on how old you are, you call it pyorrhea of the gums. But the general term for it is gum disease, and that's gingivitis up to what we call periodontitis, which is where the inflammation of your gums then has proceeded up into the supportive bone. Perio is the bone of the gums, dot, tooth, itis, inflammation. If you have that level of periodontitis, that has connection directly to your bloodstream, and then that is allowing those sorts of bacterium to travel throughout the rest of your body and is directly attributable to heart disease, um, uh, lowered pancreatic function, so a contributory factor to diabetes.
Mm,
And if you have any kind of joint replacement, or you're about to undergo chemo, or if you're gonna have a heart valve replacement,
mm.
you have to be given clearance from a dentist before they'll do it, because those sort of bacterium will go and infect a non-immune protected additive to your body. Joints can fail if they're fresh and the mouth is bad. Valve replacements are regularly infected with oral sourced bacterium colonies.
Wow.
So someone comes in, if they've had a valve replacement, even if their mouth is healthy, we prophylactically or preventatively provide them antibiotics because of the established fact that what's in the mouth can travel and does travel to the heart and can cause, lethal
Yeah.
outcomes.
Wow. Wow. This is yeah, you got me. So we have other nations are being a little more proactive than we are.
Well, and
But
we're really bad about changing course on our norms
I just
in the US.
I've got 6 kids, and so I keep thinking all the times that my kids are like, "But why, dad?" And I'm like, "'Cause I said so."
Yeah,
And it
that's the
doesn't
US in a nutshell.
yeah, and it doesn't work.
No,
It doesn't work because
no.
I have, my son, my second oldest, um, he always questioned everything. And, I finally had to reach a point to not ever be offended by him questioning. He was questioning because he sincerely wanted to know. So, in fact, I told him about this conversation, he was stoked.
Yeah.
He was like, "Yeah, I wanna hear that." And so, because I haven't been the kind of person to
Well, we can the fact that the questioning, whenever you start in America prominently, whenever some kind of modality, health or otherwise, becomes capitalized instead of remaining under the purview of a public initiative, meaning government controlled, where there is not a profit modality, questioning becomes extremely difficult because of our lobbying system. When there's a monetary value associated with something being incorporated systemically, someone is going to fight tooth and nail to protect their bottom line. Um, as of today, 2025, the fluoride industry is worth approximately $30 billion in its aggregate market application. So that's from the industrial side to the dental side. On the dental side right now, it's upwards to the 7 to 10 billion dollars. So it is still that's a lot of dough. And,
it's
and,
a
and
pretty
I,
good sized corporation.
in our concept for Arkansans, Arkansas's budget is what, 6.1 billion.
Yeah, close to 6.5, I think is what it was
So
last year.
over 2 billion,
Yeah,
over let's see, what's that? Over 2,100 millions of valuation, dollar income impact is tethered to fluoride application just within the dental aspect. That's not the water fluoridation. I actually could not find numbers of what the additive fluoride market valuation is.
wow.
But that's enough for an entity to go, I'm going to stamp out my competition. And in this case, the competition is the questioning of what else is fluoride doing? So, the majority of the studies that we're going to review in our later podcasts are not going to come from the United States, because the majority of studies that occur in the United States are not publicly funded. They are funded from a corporate sponsorship or entity, and then the few that do get public funding still have to go through a publication process. And the majority of publication entities, unless it's like PubMass or something of that nature, are heavily sponsored through corporate funding. And even our NIH, FDA, and CDC, up until the last few years, the majority of funding that came from them came from entities such as Pfizer. And so you won't see the companies' names that are more affiliated with fluoride in this
Mhm.
that sort of discussion, because their market share of what the FDA, CDC controls is minuscule compared to what Pfizer and them do. I mean, they're in the hundreds of billions.
Mhm.
Um, but I've had a lot of people over the years that I've not just done fluoride, but other things that I've investigated. But they go, "Well, why are you always sharing stuff that comes out of the United States?" And I don't go into the depths of the so-called conspiracy, because that requires so much history and laying of a network and system. But you have to just fall back and say the human body doesn't know borders. The physiology, biochemistry, biology is DNA, and that doesn't know borders.
Mhm.
So the science, quote unquote, that is done abroad, so long as the structures of the studies are done appropriately, they will be just as valid as the so-called studies that we have in the United States that show what is then paraded forward to justify what's done or not done.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the studies we'll go in detail later, they showed that earlier studies in terms of fluoride toxicity were actually constructed in a way to mask damage that is accrued over time. Um, with the way we set up water fluoridation, as I said earlier, we're trying to thread the needle of allowing a certain amount of what is a known toxin into the body where the body can uptake it in a way that is considered therapeutic,
Mhm.
without being detrimental. So in medicines or pharmacology, we have this concept called the therapeutic index. And it's basically a gradient where the exposure of said item
Mhm.
lands in a realm of benefit. And if you're below the index, nothing happens. If you're above the index, you hit a detrimental level. And in layman's terms, that detrimental level, we would call that an overdose. So Tylenol, you overdose on Tylenol, you could die or end up in the hospital through either. I always mix them up. Ibuprofen and Tylenol, one of them will destroy your liver, and the other one will destroy your kidneys if you overdose on them.
Mhm.
So, therapeutic index for fluoride has been tried to be dialed into a way to show that we won't have an overdose. A lot of the initial studies that were trying to find that therapeutic dose were done through what you would call an acute exposure modality, meaning X amount would be administered in a block dose to then show what kind of damage would be done, how the body could clear it, what the body would and would not react to. Whereas follow-up studies, and those were done in the 60s for the most part. Follow-up studies, but the follow-up studies were going, well, we tested to show what could happen in an acute setting, but we're not applying it acutely. We're applying it over a chronic
Mhm.
period of time. We're having a chronic long-term exposure. And their follow-up studies followed that. And they showed that the original studies, because of their lack of accounting for how we were actually implementing it, dropped the ball and missed what was actually happening on the systemic bodily level
Mhm.
of a chronic fluoride exposure.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you were talking about that, I'm sitting here thinking about just my exposure daily.
Mhm.
It's not just my water that I'm drinking or my toothpaste that I'm using. It's the swimming pool, it's the shower. It's so much, and even in terms of the fluoride, so much of it is wasted,
Yep.
from watering your lawn, crops, filling your pool up. But my exposure is swimming in that or taking a shower or whatnot. And
So
so,
that whole concept was actually hammered out pretty well in the 1960s. 1969, the International Society of Fluoride Research, and it's the ISFR, which was based in Switzerland, did a study trying to determine environmental fluoride impact. And one of the early things that they had attributed to a fluoride exposure, and this was environmental impact from fluoride pollutants from industry. Goiter, which is a swelling of the thyroid gland, kind of don't see it hardly at all today because of iodine in your salt. One of the reasons iodine became an additive to the salt was it was discovered to be a competitive inhibitor to fluoride absorption into the thyroid, and it would keep your thyroid functional and in its appropriate size.
Mm.
Because as they started throwing fluoride in industry all over the place, you had fluoride going out into the atmosphere and then coming down all over the place, people were developing these goiters everywhere. Um, they discovered that the fluoride in the atmosphere from an industrial stack could go anywhere up to, what was it, 20 to 40 kilometers.
Yeah.
So in American, non-Euro poor speak, that's anywhere up to ten miles. Yeah, it had been established fluoride pollutants could travel long distances before settling of 20 kilometers to 10 miles. And this was in a study that they had the Switzerland Federal Research Station for Agricultural Chemistry did, because they were showing or finding that at farms in the area within this 10-mile radius of a fluoride pollutant producing plant factory, that these plants were showing fluoride poisoning. So
Wow.
fluoride doesn't just affect animals, mammals, fish, what have you, quote unquote, living entities. It actually has toxic effects upon our plant life.
Wow.
And within that, they're going, but what they notice is like some plots next to another plot, same plant, same sort of field, different owners, were not showing near the amount of fluoride toxicity as these other ones were. So they're going, what's going on? And what they discovered was that different fertilizers that had the element boron in it caused an exponential increase in fluoride absorption within the plant. And it was exponential up to the point of 500 times higher fluoride from the environment coming down. And what they did for a control group to also check is they went to a area that did not have, or it was a negligibly measured amount of fluoride in the air,
Mhm.
meaning it might as well be the same as anywhere else. But they still did the same boron fertilizer and showed that any fluoride at all in the area was sucked up like a sponge because of the presence of this boron compound. And so due to that, you then began they phased boron out of most of fertilizers in all Western industrial use. Now, why that is important in our future discussions is they showed very early that fluoride has the capacity to interact with other elements to cause an increase in absorption outside of the measured norm.
Mm.
Um, and then they also showed because of interactions with other stuff, it can be detrimental to our absorption of other things that we need.
Yeah.
Or if it's in its natural form, the calcium fluoride aspect, it has a lower rate of absorption and therefore incorporation. And that's one of the issues that I feel in my own studies and I've seen has been a whether overlooked or just an early naivety in a, because we were just kind of understanding things back then and we didn't have the capacity
Yeah.
and knowledge of how our bodies work, or in even cases some of these elemental interactions work of a fluorine is a fluorine is a fluorine, so it should act as a fluorine. Well, the calcium fluoride, because of the way the electrons are then taken up, it's it can be absorbed and it can be used, but it largely isn't absorbed into the body at near the capacity of the way as that our common sodium fluoride is. That's the one you see in your
Mhm.
toothpaste.
Mhm.
The sodium fluoride ion or compound molecule is anywhere from 2 to 10 times more absorbable than the calcium fluoride natural counterpart. And the 14 parts per million in the Colorado, study
Yeah.
would be more akin to a anywhere from a 2.5 to 5 parts per million sodium fluoride in terms of comparable outcome of absorbability. And so with that, it goes down and hits our stomach. The hydrogen, the acidity breaks it apart into sodium and the fluoride. And then anything else that's in our system that we're ingesting at the same time will then either react with the fluoride, depending on the concentration levels, the fluoride can soak up all of that and then pass through. And so we're deprived of all of that. And then the fluoride then passes through into us. And the majority of our absorption occurs in the small intestine. So it's an actively transported compound by our body.
This is mind blowing because for me, like I said, this whole conversation just started with fluoride, and we're having that conversation a couple weeks ago at lunch. Um, but you're putting a spin on it, and you're taking me places I had
Well,
no clue.
you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
When I was in dental school and I had a course called dental biochemistry, we talked about biochemistry of fluoride from under the nose to the bottom of your chin.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about how it was absorbed. We didn't talk about what it could and could not interact with. We talked about, all right, the fluoride ion in the presence of the hydroxyapatite structure, which is the crystalline lattice that makes up our teeth. And naturally, it's calcium hydroxyapatite. And it's this really cool, like, think of a column, an octagonal column that has like a twist in it.
Yeah.
And every so often in that column, there's a point that a calcium
Mhm.
ion can go into.
Yeah.
Well, that calcium ion is what the bacterial assault attacks to cause cavitation and breaks down that lattice work.
Mhm.
Well, fluoride is able to incorporate into that spot, and because it's point on the periodic table, the higher you are, the more reactive you are. The
Yeah.
lower you are, the less reactive you are. So the fluoride and this is what was taught to me,
Mhm.
and this is the true chemistry of it. When the calcium gets damaged and pulled out, that creates that space. Well, the fluoride can then be brought into it. It's highly reactive to be brought in,
Mhm.
but then when acidity comes in to hit that, it doesn't push that fluoride out. It sets and can actually resist it.
Mm.
So I was taught all of that. What they didn't talk about, which is an extension of, we looked at fluoride in the realm that we could readily see its effect in
Mhm.
because you could see it in the smile, and we were still so compartmentalized by how the body functions worked that bones also have a hydroxyapatite structure. So therefore, fluoride, when applied or consumed systemically through your system, doesn't just go to teeth, it goes also to your bone. And even in here in Arkansas last spring, when forget the name of the senator there that presented it, he mentioned 80% or so of the fluoride we consume when swallowed doesn't go to your teeth, it goes to your bone.
Yeah.
So when applied topically, fluoride is appropriate because that's where your teeth are.
Mhm.
When applied systemically, it never does go in and then come back out through your saliva. When it hits your bloodstream, it goes to your skeletal system.
So is it ever being prescribed?
Oh, yeah. I prescribe fluoride
No,
to
no,
people
no,
all the
not
time.
by dentist. I'm talking about general health
No, I'd
practitioner.
have to say no. Because of compartmentalization of work, you might see a pediatrician prescribe it, like a
Uh-huh.
fluoride tablet. But that's still gonna be something that most pediatricians say, "Kid needs to go to the dentist." But that would be about the only place you
Not
might
for
see it.
dental. I'm just saying a
There
is there a
have
doctor ever gonna say, "Hey, he
Not
needs more
anymore.
fluoride in his blood?"
There were times where they were prescribing fluoride for osteoporosis patients,
Okay.
because osteoporosis is a weakening and thinning of the bone,
Mhm.
and it's a dysfunction of our natural remodeling systems of osteoclasts and osteoblasts. Blasts blow up, so they break down, and clasts, Latin and probably means to build, but they go back and forth to remodel.
Yeah.
Well, when you have that misbalance and the blasts are overworking, you have to be able to slow that down. So they noted that with the application of fluoride in osteoporosis patients, they saw a decrease in that imbalance. And so there was a time frame where fluoride was being prescribed by I guess you'd call that an orthopedic. I think it's orthopedics that would deal mostly with osteoporosis.
Okay.
But that was about the only time frame that you saw that.
Mm. All right. So just for me, because we obviously have a journey here, and
Yeah.
we're not going to knock it out today. Um, but I mean, where do you see this conversation? Because I want to take questions from people that do hear this. Maybe it's new to them. Maybe they've been following it, going down these rabbit trails. Maybe they're like me, and it was their spouse that turned them onto it. But where do you see this journey going over the next couple of weeks as we process and go through this?
Well, I want to preface the journey that this is all information we're discovering after the fact. There, the level of so-called conspiracy that is become synonymous with anti-fluoride should not be taken into this conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, you're one of those guys. You're
not on this topic.
at your dental conventions? No, yeah. I mean, at the dental conventions, do y'all have like a anti-fluoride side of the room, or do do your
Actually, yes.
counterparts see you
Yes,
and they're like, "Oh, he's one of
there's
those guys."
actually here in Russellville, Doctor Simmons, Don Simmons. He's retired, but as he's seen me take up this banner or gauntlet,
Yeah.
he has been repeatedly voicing affirmation and 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 in my initial support for your primary opponent and our current incumbent, Matt Duffield, he had my vote because of his stance of fluoride.
Yeah. That
And
was let me say this, because I mean, that's the only thing we're gonna say about the campaign, 'cause,
yeah,
it's
this
neither
isn't
here nor there.
about this, but
It's
yeah,
not even about that, 'cause, as I'm going through and looking at votes, and my wife's like, "Well, tell me what you're finding." I'm like, "Well, he introduced, a bill to, or he was a co-sponsor of a bill to remove fluoride." And she's like, "But we like that." And I
mhm,
was like, "Well, yeah, I'm not saying everything he did was wrong or anything like that. I was just telling her." And she's like, "But that's a good bill."
yeah,
And, as I go into it, I saw it pass the Senate and it died in committee. Um, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I've
yeah.
had people be like, "Oh, you're doing this. What are we going to talk about?" And that's the only thing we're going to go into when it goes to campaign, was that is something we agreed on.
But this is also how you and I came together.
That's how, yeah, absolutely.
And that was my first kind of like red letter thing of like, look, if I'm going to support anybody right now, that has to be point number one. And then as we continued to have conversations, found there was a lot of other
Oh,
overlap.
yeah. Yeah.
But so back to the whole, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to probably push back on this, but I stand from a position that this was a modality that was noted to have a benefit in a time frame where there was an extreme level of ignorance in terms of the impact of oral health,
Mhm.
and from the practitioner side, because an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of reactive care. And in dentistry, in that time frame, that was mountain loads of an import. If we could reduce the number of people, especially children or otherwise, that had come through in that time frame, literally suffer through making things better, we were going to be all over it.
I'm
So
looking forward to that, absolutely. I can't wait till that week. I can't wait till that conversation, because an ounce of prevention.
is it worth a ton of reactive care?
Yeah, yeah, that's something I don't think we think of.
No,
So, yeah,
but moving forward, we're going to show that our understandings and the way that we operate within our systems have to evolve with information that is uncovered without attributing blame to anybody
no,
in terms of where it began. Where we're going to end with this, there will be blame placed because of, as I said earlier, anytime we attribute or capitalize a system that is then given the wherewithal of a so-called mandate, and then a market value is attributed to that, there will be blame laid at the feet of individuals and entities that have fought to actively suppress the information. So where we began was a place of good intent. Where we're sitting now is a combination of generational acceptance, normative normative systems, and therefore acceptance thereof, and
Because I
then
said so.
because I said so, because mom and dad did it, because it was good for them. But then on the back end, all of that sentiment is being propped up and reinforced by, I'm making a lot of money and I'm not going to let that go.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for doing this with me and answering my questions. So, if you do have questions, I'll throw that out there. Anybody that does have questions, you can put them in the comments.
Yeah.
Um, do you do you have any kind of a website or anything that people can go look at?
The my actual website for my clinic, which on my Facebook page, I have, as a clinician and a clinic, made my stance of I'm anti-fluoride in the water. So you can message us there. It's Aaron Bratton, DDS, Atkins Dental Clinic. You can also find us at mustachioDDS.com.
We'll put that in the we'll put that link, that mustachio. I haven't checked this website out. I might have to check it out before we
More of that's just bragging on my cosmetic dentistry skills.
Okay. Okay. I love it. I
But
love
you
it.
can also add me on my personal Facebook. It's Aaron Bratton. I don't have the beard on it, but that's fine. You'll see my posts and probably like, oh yeah, that's that guy.
That's the guy.
That's the guy.
And hey, you were talking about tinfoil hats.
Yeah,
I found a company.
the ham.
Yeah, have
Formerly lambs, but it's like
lambs. Yeah, it's
hams or
having
whatever. Habits. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
I bought that for my wife for Christmas, and
Has she noticed a difference?
oh yeah, she loves it.
Now,
She
does
loves
she
it.
love it because it's comfortable, or has she noticed a
No,
difference?
she sleeps better. She
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
she's noticed it. And so I was watching the videos, and they take the phone, and it's reading all the
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
ev- everything
Yeah, it's
coming
a
through it.
Faraday cage for your head.
Yeah, and then they put it over it, and it all goes away. And so yeah, I've tried it out.
So that conversation can be a podcast later.
Yeah,
But eh, we're entering an era where the so-called crazy schizo hermit tinfoil guys,
they were right about a lot of stuff.
they were onto a lot more than we gave them credit for. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that's what this conversation is for. It's a education. It's bringing to light, having conversations around things that uh, maybe we missed it.
yeah,
Maybe we missed it 80 years ago, and being able to admit that. But how do we get there? And so it's not a quote unquote conspiracy theory, and we're not quote unquote those guys
yeah.
asking questions. It's saying, no, this is logical thinking, and that's what I appreciate the approach.
This is the evolution of medical science.
Yeah.
I mean, we're always growing, we're always changing, we're expanding in our understanding of our bodies and how these things work.
Yeah.
We will be doing this every, I believe, Friday is what we just
Okay.
Friday
Yeah.
or Saturday afternoons, and as far as posting, probably Mondays.
Yeah, we'll get it. We'll get it out there. So yeah, if you have questions, write them in the comments, shoot us a message or thoughts. So yeah, thanks for joining us.
All right, we'll see y'all next week.
Thank you.